So where are we today? Well, if you look across this country, you see a lot of things going on in classrooms. You see Reader's Workshop, you see DRTAs, you see anticipation guides, you see QAR, you see directed reading activities, you see literature circles, you see book clubs, and there's all sort of a mix of all of these kinds of things that are going on. And I think we have the right methodology. But one of my theses today is we may have the right methodologies, but maybe we're not always using them right. In other words, and I'll try to illustrate that in a few minutes. Let's see. And then along came Common Core. And I saw this beginning to emerge in about 2004. I was in Maryland at the time. I'm still in Maryland. And this came out of the National Governors Association, NGA. And I put down here that it was a educational issue, but it's also an economic issue. See, governors want companies and industry to come to their state. And if you look at the South now, like South Carolina, they're producing almost as many automobiles, BMW, Nissan, Toyota, in upstate South Carolina as we are here in southeastern Michigan. The Hertz company just moving their headquarters to Estero, Florida, which is just down the road from where Joan and I stay for about 3 months. By the way, you have to know how much I wanted to come to Oakland University because I left 80-degree temperature to come here, all right? And to see my friends and to talk to you about it and see the new doctoral students and so on. And we begin, and it was headed up by a guy by the name of David Coleman. And we began to talk about deep comprehension. You didn't see that term very much in 2000 or 99, but you began to see it about 2004, close reading terms. By the way, the basal reader companies now have adopted that and so on. Increased focus on informational text. That's not a bad idea, but we must not lose the important attention to children's literature and to quality literature. So there has to be a balance. We tend to sort of bounce back and forth on that. More complex text. They decided kids weren't reading hard enough stuff. It had to be more complex. And I think there's some merit to that, quite frankly. But it's more than just getting kids to read harder text. We have to teach kids to read better whatever text they're reading, whether it's easy, moderate, or hard. And I've not been particularly pleased, I'll get into trouble here just like Stauffer does, that we've not responded this the way I think we might as an organization. As a professional organization. Then text-dependent questions. You hear that a lot, text-dependent questions. Because Coleman realized that when you tested kids, sometimes the brighter kids gave you answers based on what they already knew, not based on what they're reading. So Coleman was really smart, but he was not particularly wise. And I've said this publicly about David Coleman, because he didn't know, he was not a teacher. He was a Rhodes Scholar. And he didn't know how to deal with this issue, which we'll see how to deal with a little bit later. There's a way of dealing with this issue of text-dependent questions without limiting the questions to just what the text says. Okay? So the profession has responded in a variety of ways. And as you well know, this is a political issue as well as a curriculum issue. It may be a major issue in the 2016 presidential campaign, depending on who. So it's an educational issue, it's an economic issue, because what governors want to say, come to South Carolina, come to Florida, because companies are looking for two things. What are they? A good tax base and educated workers, workers that can be trained. And so it's both economic and educational. That takes us up to sort of a thumbnail sketch of the research and the instructional practice. Does that make sense to you? Okay? And I thought we would do a story, and you want to switch it over? Let's see how we might actualize that. And we actually have time to do this before our break at 10:15. I'm going to take you through a story. Yeah, let's raise it up just a little bit. Good. Envision a first grade classroom. We're sitting down with 5 or 6 or 7 first graders. We're going to do a guided reading, okay? Sort of a la Stauffer, a la Fuentes and Pinnell, although we're going to do it a particular way. And I'm going to say to this first grade kids, what's the title of the story? And I'm going to ask you, what's the title of our story, kids? Lost. And my next question, who do you think might be lost? By the way, now I know some of you read this story, which is fine, but if you haven't read it, who do you think might be lost?
The bear and
The bears could be lost. Who else could be lost? The boy could be lost, or they both could be lost. Okay. In other words, what are we doing? We're opening up possibilities, right? Okay. Well, let's find out. Now, after the kids have said that, they're curious to find out. That's the disequilibration that Shay talked about. What do you see there? You see it? What's happening? Go ahead. Anybody, come on. Yeah. What do you see crawling in the truck? Yeah. Why is he crawling in the truck, first graders?
for food.
How do you know there's food in that truck?
Because it's a snack truck.
It's that snacks truck, okay? And he probably what? Maybe he can't read, because usually bears can't read, but what else could he know? How could he know there's snacks in that truck? He can smell them, yeah. So he crawls in that truck. And what else that may be relevant here? Does anybody else know he's crawling in the truck? How do you know? The driver what?
He's busy.
He's busy. Doing what?
He's fixing a tire.
Yeah, and fixing a tire. Okay, so what's going to happen, kids? Truck's going to... Okay, well, let's find out. There he goes, right? Opening page. I'm walking down the street when I hear someone crying. Who is it? How do you know it's a bear? See, no first graders, any first grader is going to say, it's a bear. And you say, why? And they say, I see the paw. First graders are really good at that. In some cases, they're better than we are. So, okay. How's the bear feeling?
Sad and lonely.
Yeah, let's find it. It's a bear. He looks lost and afraid, and the tall buildings scare him, and he's never seen so many people. What do you suppose the boy's going to say to him, kids? Don't be afraid, or what? Don't cry. Okay. I will do what? I'll help you. Have you read this story before? Okay. Notice you sort of know what's going to happen before it happens. There it is. Don't worry, I tell him. The buildings won't hurt you, and most of the people are friendly. How'd you get here? I asked. I climbed in to have a nap, he explains, and when I woke up, I was lost. I'll help you. Tell me where you live. And by the way, I usually use this story, and I use this story myself, with first graders in the spring of the year. They're about ready for this my first grade grandson could basically read this story now. So some of them read it silently, some of them read it sort of personally. In other words, they're still reading out loud, but they're not reading to other people and so on. Where's the bear says he lives? What's the bear going to say? Lives in the woods. What's in the woods? Trees, yeah. There are trees where I live, he tells me, so he finds some trees. More trees, he says, and water. I take him to a place where there are more trees and water. No, he says, this is not it either. I have an idea. Follow me, I say. What do you think the boy's idea is? I take him to a tall building. Now, why would you take a bear to a tall building? What are they going to do? And I ask that question, and I interrupt you. What am I asking my first graders to do? Problem solve. Why are they going to a tall building?
Get on top of the building.
Tip on the building and what?
See where he lives.
See where he lives, okay. How are they going to get to the top of that tall building?
Elevator.
An elevator? Gwen, have you read the story before?
No.
No?
I haven't.
Gwen, you want to read the next page?
We go inside, get on the elevator, and ride all the way to the top.
Okay. Now, you folks are really smart, okay? But I'm not bad either. Because I knew on this next page was the word elevator. And I knew if I asked it right, I wouldn't have to teach that word beforehand. What did I say to you? How are they going to get to the top of the building? You said elevator, and you turned and that word has come right up to the surface of your brain, right? And I planted that word. So then when you read it, by the way, don't you love that picture? So, and I think that may be the last one. So I will finish reading it to you, okay? And then notice the kids are reading it. Are they engaged? You bet they are. because they have to find out what's happening next. Well, how's that? So, from up here, we can see the whole city. Look, I say, now we can find your home. There it is, he says, pointing. Down we go across 3 streets and into the park. The park is not the bear's home either, but he likes it there. What do you suppose they're going to do in the park? What do you do in parks? Yeah, we go for a boat ride. We have lunch. And I'll show you this picture later, but we have lunch. And you can see the bear eating all the hot dogs, and the vendors put a sold out sign there. You know, he's eating all the hot dogs and stuff. And we go to the playground. We are having a good time. But, do what? It's getting late. And what about the bear? The bear's still lost. Okay? Why don't we try putting this on the document camera. Let's try the library, I tell him. Oh, by the way, before I go there, I will want to say to the kids, what are they going to do? Bear's still lost. In effect, what I'm asking these 6-year-olds, these scholars that Stauffer talks about, how are they going to solve this problem? And what do you suppose 6-year-olds say? He's going to take the bear home where? To his mom. That's what 6-year-olds say. What else do they say? They'll take him to the zoo. You say, well, that's possible, but there's a little problem with that, perhaps. What's the problem?
They'll keep him.
They'll keep him. Sure. Don't want to keep him. Or maybe they'll find, who's that man or woman around that sometimes helps you in cities? Find a policeman. Well, let's find out. Okay, and you turn the page, and then it says, let's try, this is a little cumbersome. Here we go. Let's try the library, I tell him. We can find out anything there. Okay? Inside the library, we look through the books. The bear sees a picture that looks like his home. We find the place on a map and hurry outside. A bus is leaving. By the way, what kind of bus is it? How do you know it's a Greyhound?
Has the dog in the back.
You don't have the whole word, you just have what? You got part of it, right? Greyhound. Okay, so they're going to get on the bus, and what are they going to do? They're going to ride. They're going to ride for a short while or a long while? A long time. Guess what? We get on the bus and ride for what? A long time. Okay. Now, I'm sort of scaffolding this very closely for you in this case. I could do less of that, and so on. Finally, we are there. This is where I live, says the bear. He gives me a hug and thanks me again for my help. Then he do what? Somebody said it. Then he waves goodbye and disappears into the forest. You're all mumbling. See, you're ahead of me. And that's where you want the reader to be. The trees are so tall and there aren't any people. Wait, I tell him. I call to the bear. Come back. I think I'm lost, I tell him. Don't worry, he says. I will help you. All right. Now, a simple little story that would cut across any number of cultures and so on. And you could say to first graders, what's that story about? What's it about?
Helping.
Helping. That's the theme. And if you help somebody, they might, in return, help you. And you say, oh, first graders can't deal with theme. Of course they can. Okay? If we structure it and ask it in the right way and teach it concretely and so on. And we talk about that. By the way, I would not begin with that helping theme. I'd wait till the kids have read the story, and then we'd talk about what the story gives us, and so on. Do you like the illustrations in the story? Say yes, okay. Any ones you particularly like? We'll just keep that on a minute.
To keep the story on?
Yeah. Any ones you particularly like?
I like the boy on the bear's shoulders.
Boy on the bear's shoulders. And remember, the kids would have the books in front of them. I didn't bring 30 books. And what about the one in the elevator? Don't you love that one? Yeah, that's the East Coast, right? What's the bear doing? John, you remember what the bear's doing? It's standing there, and what are the people doing? They're reading the paper. No one's paying attention to the bear, you know.
Notice a bear.
Right. Now, if you were down south in South Carolina or Florida, those people would say, you know, if you get an elevator, and I'm stereotyping here, down in Mississippi, and I still do a little work in Mississippi, you get in the elevator in the morning, every floor you go down, people say, morning, good morning, good morning, how are you? You know, you get an elevator in Boston, you know, they're not going to talk to you for the most part, right? It's a difference in culture and so on. And then that wonderful one, yeah, you can't see it. Now let's go to the one, you don't have it there. Remember he's on the bus and there's a newspaper and he has, yeah, they're on the bus and it says lions, mall bears. The guy's reading the sports page. Okay. And and so kids would go back and find the illustration that he really liked. And they would talk about it. And then you would say, you like this illustrator? Oh, yeah. Okay, who is it? Well, it's the same guy who wrote the book. He's really good at this. I wonder what he says about art. And if you turn to the teacher's manual, it tells you. But they tell the kids about David McPhail before they read the book. Okay. You could do that, but I would rather have kids engage in the story and look at the illustrations, and kids say, man, that artist is really good. And there's all kinds of clever things, okay? And we talk about what these wonderful illustrations are, and then as a first grader, I'm interested in who this artist is. And could he get me to draw like this, and so on. So it's not just what you do. Sometimes it's, oh yeah, there it is there. You can't see it very much. Thanks so much. Lions, small bears, you know, and he's looking askance and so on. And by the way, there's other clever things in this book. If you look very closely, if you look at the boy's baseball cap, it has a bee on it. And I didn't realize this for years. So chances are he's in what city? Boston or Baltimore. Okay.
Your opening illustration has Beacon Street.
Has Beacon Street. The kids might not know that, but it is Beacon Street. You're absolutely right, Jim. Yeah, and I was using this story with undergraduates at Washington College, and the girl said to me the same thing. She said, that's Beacon Street, that's Boston. Also, in one of the pictures, you notice there's a little guy off the side. He's got a sweatshirt on, and it says Celtics on it, Boston Celtics. Now, it took me a couple years or longer than that before I realized. So here's an artist who's very clever, you know, of dropping in and so on, and they can appreciate that. Now, before we break, I think we can do this very quickly. Let's go back to the slides. Let's look. I turned to a teacher's manual. This book is very popular in different commercial programs, and I turned to a teacher's manual and see how they handled it. Think about how we handled it, okay? I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about a different kind of methodology. Let's look at what Houghton Mifflin Harcourt does, okay? By the way, in this particular lesson of the teacher's manual, and I know it's easy to bash these things. I used to work for one of those publishers, some. But there's 61 pages of teacher directions for this one lesson. 61 pages. There are 4 books for the grade level. Each of them weighs 2.5 pounds. And I've decided, or thought about writing an article saying to a teacher, you want to lose 10 ugly pounds? Get rid of the manual. You know, teach the way you know how to teach. Anyway, this is what's in the manual, believe me. Building background. Where does that come from? It comes from Betts, originally, okay? And we don't want to blame Betts for this, but ask children where bears usually live in the wild. See, they've done nothing of the stuff that we just did. So sort of expunge that from your mind. Explain that bears are wild animals that usually live in the forest away from people. Rather than turning that around, at least you could salvage that a little bit and say, what do you know about bears? Okay? Then ask children what would happen if a bear got lost in the city. And then we're going to spend time teaching all this vocabulary. Unnecessary words like elevator. We can deal with elevator very nicely. Okay? The next slide, when Dorsey finds the... Oh, here it is, right here. Thank you. There's a strategy focus, teacher modeling. The title of the story tells me that someone must be lost, but I don't know who it is. I'll read ahead to see if the story tells me. It does. The bear is lost. Now, what has the teacher done? The teacher has taken over this story, taken it away from the kids. There's no engagement. Have children read to find out what happens when a bear gets lost in the city. And then you turn the kids loose to read the story, okay? Now, I ask you, if you look at these two different models, and we're not talking about Dorsey Hammond, you look at those two different models, and I did the first model with you quickly, okay? But which has the greater intellectual engagement, okay? Which has more emotional impact? Which has deeper understanding? Which has greater enjoyment for the kids? Okay, all of these things are important. Which model will result in greater long-term memory of story, and sometimes those stories don't need to be remembered, and the reading experience? And this is the point I want to leave you with just before break. We often, two teachers can say they're using the same model. We're each doing guided reading. You follow what I'm saying? And we say, well, we're doing guided reading. That's very popular. But one teacher is really engaging the kids, and the other teacher is doing a telling and a modeling and having the kids sort of read through the story in a more superficial kind of way. So, and I think we take a lot of comfort in strategies. We say, well, I'm using guided reading, or I'm using this. But what we have to look at as doctoral students, as faculty, as teachers, with interns in our classroom, what we have to look is at the quality of that lesson, whatever the label is. So that gives you a little sense of where we've been in terms of theory, a lot of stuff yet to do, where we've been in terms of instruction, where I think we ought to be now, and there's one example. So let's take that 15-minute break and we'll come back. And I actually moved through this as quickly as I had hoped to, so we have a chance to look at some informational text after the break. Thanks.